Mega Man and Bass. I know that me just saying that title makes you feel something. It's one of the most divisive Mega Man games ever made, and I'll just say, after playing it, I'm not at all surprised, and there are a good number of reasons for that. First, it's the only classic series game not released on any modern platform, so fewer people have actually played it. The game design itself also has plenty of, let's call them love it or hate it moments, many of which you wouldn't necessarily find in some of the other games. The original version was only released in Japan on a console that was already out of date by the time it came out. And then when it finally did show up in the West, we got it with the interesting Game Boy Advance version. All of these and more have contributed to this being one of the most hated classic series games from many game reviewers and fans alike. But its backers are just as fervent in saying that it's one of the best Mega Man games. I mean, just look at this post I made mentioning that I was playing it last month. We have comments like, "Bless your soul for this endurance test. You have my sympathy," followed up immediately by, "The best Mega Man game of all time." There seriously isn't anywhere near a consensus on this game's quality, so I had to wonder, what would I think? Like many of you, I had never actually played Mega Man and Bass until I made this video. I mean, you're not making this video, but you know what I mean. I mean, again, it's not available on any modern console, being the only classic series game not in the Legacy Collection for whatever reason. And considering how many people hated the game with a burning passion, I wasn't exactly going out of my way to play it. But once I started this series of reviews about a year ago, I knew that with this one, I'd have to go all out. So I did. I played this game 4 times. Once with Mega Man on Super Nintendo, then with Bass on Super Nintendo, once with Bass on GBA, then finally with Mega Man on GBA. I was worried I might not have too much new to say about this game considering how much has already been talked about, but I was actually surprised by how many thoughts I have that I haven't heard from other people before. This should be a fun one. So strap in and get ready for some thoughts on my first experience with Mega Man and Bass, and my next 3 experiences as well. Let's get started. First of all, what the heck even is Mega Man and Bass? There's Mega Man 8 in 1996 and Mega Man 9 in 2008, but in 1998 we got the only game in the classic series without a number. Well, until next year. And it's also back on the Super Nintendo, whereas 8 had already moved to the next generation. So is it a spin-off? Well, I guess technically, but also not really. I just call it the 9th game in the classic series. Essentially, the team wanted to take some of the assets from Mega Man 8 and make them into an extra difficult game. And, you know, in that at least, they certainly succeeded. They put it on the Super Nintendo to appeal to younger players who didn't have any of the newer systems. This game's biggest new addition, obviously, is the ability to choose either Mega Man or Bass as a playable character. Mega Man works exactly as you'd expect, playing about the same as he has for the past 5 games or so. Bass, though, is very different. Rather than the Charge Shot and Mega Buster, he has the Rapid Fire Bass Buster, which he's able to aim in any of 7 directions, not including straight down. You can just hold the shoot button to automatically fire, but you can't move while firing. And also, his shots can't pass through walls like Mega Man's can. This alone would make the 2 characters feel pretty different, but Bass also brings in a Mega Man X-style dash instead of the slide, and a double jump. Unlike the slide, you don't duck under projectiles or tight passages, but you can carry this momentum into a huge jump forward and then even follow it up with a double jump. So Bass's platforming is way more lenient than Mega Man's. A lot of it you don't even have to do, which feels really strange for the series. Normally the platforming in the classic series is slower and more considered, but not if you're playing as Bass. So as a compromise, he's supposed to have a harder time dealing with bosses, and I guess that's technically true, but only without weaknesses. His normal attack only does 1 point of damage at a time, which just makes every fight an absolute drag unless you go in the prescribed stage order. He can use all the same weapons as Mega Man, and if you do have those weapons, you can often just dash and jump away from the boss's attacks while doing the same amount of damage. So as long as you go in the weakness order, even the bosses are easier for Bass than for Mega Man. But if you don't, they're just annoyingly slow roadblocks you likely won't be able to pass. Mega Man has the Charge Shot, which does more damage to bosses, meaning he's able to break out of the stage order more easily. But even then, a good number of these bosses are kind of just unbeatable without their weakness unless you learn the game inside and out. So in the end, Mega Man's weaknesses are nowhere near enough to balance out his strengths. I just think of Bass as this game's easy mode and Mega Man as hard mode, but honestly a Bass playthrough is just way more fun as well, which we'll certainly get into. With the big new addition out of the way, let's get to the aesthetics. This is a great looking game for the console, which makes sense considering that it's a late release that's also using sprites taken from a PS1 game. I mean, it's certainly no Mega Man 8, there's no way it could be, but it's colorful, animated very smoothly, and has some pretty interesting looking locations to go through. I think the stages are some of my favorite visually in the series, with stuff like these Sandfalls and Groundman stage, and the overall wackiness of Magic Man being pretty unique and memorable. It was a little weird that they just decided to reuse Tengu Man and Astro Man from 8, but the bosses play totally differently, and the stages are fresh, so I don't really mind. And as always with Mega Man, I really like the music here. It strikes a perfect balance between the styles of 7 and 8, being both chill and energetic at the same time, somehow. The instrumentation is probably my favorite in the classic series. There's just a really pleasant sound to everything. Most of the individual tracks are pretty memorable as well, with my favorites being Cold Man, Tengu Man, Pirate Man, and the opening stage theme. I also think it fits the art style extremely well. Not the absolute best in the series or anything, but it's definitely above average even with some really tough competition. And to be fair, I've heard the music of all the other games way more, so I could like Mega Man and Bass more over time. Next, I'd like to get to some other differences between this game and the others. First off is the database system, which acts as a sort of completionist challenge. Essentially, you just have a bunch of CDs you can pick up throughout the main stages, and getting them allows you to view some information about a specific Mega Man character. They actually put a lot of effort into what could have easily been a throwaway system, giving nearly every single classic series character ever their own entry. That includes every single Robot Master, the main characters and villains, the Star Droids from 5 on the Game Boy, the Mega Man killers, and even these characters from the Wily Wars that I've literally never heard of. I really have to get around to playing that someday, by the way. The CDs are completely optional with no gameplay benefit whatsoever, but it's still fun to have something to pick up from time to time in the stages when you come across them. Will I be getting them all? Absolutely not. I got about 80% of the ones I was able to actually see, and that was only 40% of the total. The rest seem like they're hidden in ridiculous locations, either asking you to play a stage and then come back to it again with the weapon you get from beating that stage, being hidden in random walls, or forcing you to use rush search on random floors. Yeah, no thanks. I'll just stick to picking up the ones I find myself. Each CD has a description, a quote, one good and bad quality, and the likes and dislikes of that character. In the original version, well, I assume these are fun to read. I tried for around 5 minutes to get a fan translation working, then realized, wait, this is a Mega Man game. Who cares if I can read it? So I just played the whole game in Japanese, and I can't exactly comment on the quality of the writing here. But I definitely can with the GBA version, and this translation is absolutely abysmal. This game came out in 2002. How in the world did this make it to the final release? But you know what? Like with the voice acting in Mega Man 8, I'm totally okay with this entirely because of the funny factor. Like, let's look at Snake Man's entry. I'd like to learn more about him. A robot created to investigate the narrow areas. He uses a snake-like missile called Search Snake. You can't hide from me. Sure, that sounds like him, I guess. His best quality is Green Robot. Unfortunately, though, he's also an elusive idea. He likes Toadman, interesting choice to say the least. And just take a guess what he doesn't like. The answer is Slug. How about Metal Man? Well, he's quick at work, but shady business. He likes Frisbee, but does not like dog. Cloudman's best quality is being a couch potato? I mean, he does refuse to move at all when I fight him, so I guess that makes sense. Pharaoh Man's worst quality is that he's, too nice to women? Oh, but it's okay, Brightman is here to save us, since he hates unmoral districts. Alright, how about I meet someone new? I haven't played Wily Wars, let's get to know Mega Water S, whoever that is. Oh, alright, enough of that. The bad translation also makes the story cutscenes nearly unintelligible, but I mean, who cares? King is not nice and kills Proto Man. We get to King's castle and Proto Man kills Proto Man. And then... the end. No idea if a better translation would actually improve things here all that much, especially because these cutscenes play again every time you die to one of King's forms, and take up like 20 precious seconds of your life even if you're already mashing through the text as fast as possible. Although at least you can speed them up this time, unlike in Mega Man 7, and there are way fewer cutscenes anyway, so other than that, it's mostly unintrusive. As for the controls, they're basically perfect. I'd call them the best of any classic series game outside of maybe 11, but I haven't played that one in a while, so I don't remember for sure. It plays just like 8 with the great fluid animations, except everything moves a bit faster, which I appreciate. The only unfortunate omission is the ability to use both the Buster and a special weapon at the same time, and I don't really know why they removed that, honestly. The Super Nintendo controller has enough buttons. But the thing that makes me give it first place among the classic series is Bass. He controls amazingly and is just a ton of fun to play with. Using a dash jump in a classic series game almost feels like cheating at times, but I mean, I'm not complaining. Speaking of the special weapons, they're just awesome. Like with Mega Man 8, we have a useful and varied lineup with occasional extra utility. But in terms of combat power, these are far superior to those ones, and I love basically all of them. The spread drill launches this massive drill which splits on command into multiple smaller drills that hit multiple times each, doing absolutely ridiculous damage if you can line it up properly. The wave burner is just a continuous attack that shreds through anything close by. The Tengu Blade is both a giant, powerful multi-hit melee attack, and a long-range projectile that bounces off walls and replaces your dash or slide with a damaging lunge forward. Usually this will get you hit, but it's at least situationally useful. The Remote Mind is basically the Flash Bomb, but it latches onto an enemy and lets you trigger the explosion yourself. Then there's the Magic Card, which is pretty weak but can aim in 4 directions and pick up items that are out of reach. My favorite though is the Ice Wall, which is not just very powerful against big or immobile enemies, but also acts as a platform. Then you can push the platform and jump on top, which lets you cross long gaps of spikes while also destroying any enemy in the way. They knew this one was fun to use, as like half the CDs I got were locked behind it, and Coldman is an easy first boss so you can get it right away. These weapons definitely have an argument for being the best set so far, they're just so powerful and really fun to use. After playing Mega Man X4, I do kind of wish that Bass got his own powers rather than just using the exact same ones as Mega Man with slightly different coloring, but I can't be too upset when the weapons are this consistently good. And I think the new shop is worth a mention as well, because they once again changed it up. It's now a combination of the 2 previous systems. You have the bolts as a currency like in 7 rather than a finite set of collectibles like in 8. But the actual things you buy include both single-use items like in 7 and more impactful power-ups like in 8, many of which have to be unlocked by progressing through the game. There's also an interesting system where some of these stronger power-ups have to be equipped, but you can only choose one at a time. As Bass, do you want to take less damage, have the Buster deal 2 damage instead of 1, or be able to shoot through walls? The choice is yours, but you can only have one of these active at a time. Meanwhile, hyperspeed dashes for Bass and quick charge shots for Mega Man, along with the energy balancer, are passive, and you can use them in combination with equipables. Some of them, like the double damage Bass Buster, are kind of game-breakingly powerful. And the cool part is there's no need to spend conservatively, as right before the castle you get taken to the stage that gives you like 800 bolts or something, so you have plenty of things you'll be able to buy. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I realize how fun and well considered of a system this all is, so I have to commend them for that. And the last general thing to bring up, which I also really like, is the stage unlock system. Look, I know some people hate it when the games do anything that's not the classic 8 stages all at once structure, but I just don't get it. As I keep bringing up in these videos, I think change is good, and having 2 sets of 4 stages allows for a much better difficulty curve. Here though, they came up with something way more interesting. Basically, you have this grid with Coldman, Astroman, and Groundman unlocked from the start. These tend to be the easier stages, although Astroman is probably too hard of a boss for a first pick, so choose one of the other 2. Beating any of these 3 levels will unlock a few more. Coldman leads to Burner Man and Pirate Man, Astroman leads to Dynamo Man, and Groundman leads to Tengu Man and Magic Man. And this means that Burner Man, Dynamo Man, and Tengu Man can't be reached without their weaknesses. For the first 2, thank God, they're nearly unplayable without weaknesses. For Tengu Man, why did they do that? Finally, you have to beat all 5 to get to the king stages. It's a fun system, and I think it would be nice to see them experiment more with stage order like this in the future. Alright, so we're looking pretty solid so far. Makes sense, as the basics are good in nearly every Mega Man game. The thing that most people who dislike Mega Man and Bass talk about is the level design and bosses. Even if you haven't played the game, I'm sure you've still heard stories about Burner Man or King Stage 2 and how awful they are. And, well, yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack here. When you actually analyze the level design and bosses in this game, I actually don't think they're too out of the ordinary for Mega Man. It definitely feels like most other classic series games in most of the ways that matter, but just more difficult than usual. This isn't Mega Man 8, there aren't really any gimmicks to speak of. Keep in mind that's not me bashing 8, I love that game, and I love gimmicks, but yeah. So, now for the moment you've been waiting for. Let's finally get into some of my personal opinions on Mega Man and Bass. How exactly did I feel about it on my first ever playthrough with Mega Man? Honestly, I kind of hated this game. Now, hate is relative, I would have at least placed it above Mega Man 1, but that's it. Easily the second worst in the classic series. So why is that? Well, funnily enough, my first impression was actually very positive. The intro stage is really good and surprisingly long for what it is. It shows off the mechanics of both characters, as with Mega Man you have some pretty tight platforming and a few difficult to hit enemies. It gets inspired by older games with a Fireman-esque section here and the Rain and Wind platforming from Toadman as well. And then with Bass, the whole thing is extremely easy, as you just double jump and dash over everything and angle your shots to take down every enemy without even trying. Then it ends with the easiest boss in recorded history, a way less annoying version of the Green Devil from 8. After that, I chose Cold Man first. And this is a really good stage in basically every way. It shows off a lot of new ways to use the Mega Man 8 assets repackaged into something different, like the ice pusher machines that have been turned into obstacles that automatically throw the ice at you. But it's not just old stuff. These cracking ice floors are a new idea used particularly well in positions where it's often a bit tough to react to exactly what you have to do, but they're never unfair. There's also a respawning extra life right before the hardest section, which is something this game does pretty often, and I'm completely on board with that. Along with having more checkpoints in these stages than usual, this helps reduce the possibility that you'll get a game over during the stage itself. And that's important because, again, these are probably the hardest main stages in the series up to this point. Even Cold Man, intended to be the starter stage, has a good number of insta-kill hazards and difficult set pieces. My favorite part is this water section where you can intentionally fall down through the ice and discover a few collectible discs. Cold Man himself is also just a really solid boss without his weakness, and I like how the intensity ramps up over time. This cold cloud thing prevents you from shooting if it gets to you, but you can also get rid of it if you're careful enough. And like I said, this gives you the ice wall, which is just awesome, so I made sure to go here first in every single playthrough. From there, you have a few possible choices that make sense. The ice wall is Burner Man's weakness, which took me a while to figure out actually, and he and Pirate Man have just been unlocked by beating Cold Man. But Astro Man and Ground Man are also available from the start. One of the nice things about playing as Mega Man is that you can go to basically any of these next, although I'd recommend saving Astro Man especially for much later. I ended up trying out Burner Man first, and yeah, that didn't work out too well for me. It's probably the hardest main stage, and Burner Man is near impossible to beat until you put some real work into learning his patterns, even with the weakness. So I stumbled around for a bit and eventually was able to beat Ground Man instead. This stage is definitely okay. I think it does a lot of cool stuff, but also a lot that's really annoying. The beginning where you fall down a vertical shaft with a bunch of sand falling and quicksand at the bottom is awesome, and I was surprised by how little I fell on top of an enemy I couldn't see, so good job there. I also think these rooms where you have to find a safe zone as this centipede-looking robot runs through the passage are pretty cool, although they're a little confusing at times. And then fighting one of them right after is a fun idea for a mini-boss. But then the stage kind of falls apart. This puzzle room where you have to make your way through without destroying too many of these, Moai heads, I think, is tutorialized very poorly, and you're almost guaranteed to die a few times before you figure it out. Thankfully, there is an extra life that respawns infinitely right before it, but the room right before is so long and drawn out, why couldn't you just put the checkpoint one room later? Oh yeah, and this final part where these fish enemies come up and destroy the ground is just awful. The Sniper Joe here is placed perfectly to make it near impossible to avoid damage. It's not the worst thing ever, but I didn't like this section. Then Groundman is a very solid boss, beatable without the weakness, and the patterns are memorable, tough, and fun to dodge while not being too annoying. He's basically just Drillman done much better, so I liked him quite a bit. After that I went to Tengu Man. This stage was pretty decent. The balloon auto-scroller part at the beginning is kind of annoying as Mega Man, but then we get to this exploratory section with many different paths, which I liked a lot. It makes good use of the ice wall in unlocking this upper path where you have to use it to slide over some spikes and get a CD and other pickups. The rest of the stage is pretty basic though. Tengu Man seems like he would have been a tough boss to deal with, but I already have the spread drill so he instantly dies. Again, why did they do that? You have to go out of your way to not use his weakness, which admittedly turns him into a really fun boss. I tried it out once just to see. I still think this is far better than the worst weakness interactions of something like Mega Man 7 though, because it takes way less time and you still have to find the proper rhythm of when exactly to fire. Now with the Tengu Blade we can go to Magic Man. As for Magic Man himself, despite the fact that he's nearly impossible to beat without the Tengu Blade, figuring out how to use it is actually really fun. You can do extra damage to him with the projectile, but you have to get right up close and hit the melee attack to actually stun him. And you'll need to do that because with Magic Man, just doing more damage is not going to be enough. That's a great way to follow up on the better boss design from 8 I talked about in that video, and a lot of the rest of them have similar fun techniques. Like with the Ground Man, if you use the remote mine from Pirate Man, you can stick him and do extra damage and stun him when he tries to burrow into the ground. That's a lot of fun. As for Magic Man's stage, it would be great if not for one thing, this annoying train section at the beginning. Basically, you have these trains going over a bottomless pit, and you're only able to stand on the very back of them. All the while, enemies are surprise attacking you and you have to get onto platforms above the trains, but any damage here is basically instant death. It just feels luck-based, and I don't understand how you're supposed to do it consistently without way too much trial and error. With the base, the section is trivial, but with Mega Man, I just don't like it. After that though, things improve a lot. I especially like this part here where you climb a vertical shaft as these spiked platforms rotate whenever the robots in the background hit the bells. And the second train section later on is way easier and more fun, with more interesting level design as well. Without the intro and the boss being unbeatable without the weakness, I could easily call Magic Man one of my favorite stages, but unfortunately those problems are there. After that, I was able to finish Astro Man with the magic card. That boss is a little too chaotic without it, so I'd suggest not going here until you have it. I don't think it's impossible or anything, but tough for sure. Anyway, I found this stage to be really annoying. I feel like everything it does is technically a fair challenge, but it's just not fun. Really long and tight disappearing block sections, these floor panels that push you up to the ceiling with spikes on it, enemies randomly popping out of the background and zooming at you, these enemies on the ceiling that I think are literally impossible to hit without the right weapon. I don't know, it's just not a great time. Honestly, I felt the same way about a lot of this game. It's not that it's terribly designed, like it does work as intended, but I feel like the difficulty mostly comes from just being annoying to the player and wearing them down with obnoxious obstacles. It's not really the fun kind of challenge, you know? Case in point, Burner Man. Easily the worst main stage in the game, and I don't understand why anyone thought this was a good idea. I do like the part with spears coming out of the background, but that's about it. The whole thing is based on platforms you could fall through in the first half, which is never a fun gimmick and I don't get why they keep bringing it back. And the stage is full of really beefy enemies. Like, so many of them. Who finds these fun? It's not hard at all, just extremely tedious to get rid of them. Plus the final part where this giant enemy drops insta-kill fire that rises from the ground for a while is just stupid. It's almost impossible to avoid taking damage in many of these sections, and I don't like that. And as I hinted at, Burner Man himself is really annoying too. He spends half the fight off screen while charging at you, and the weakness is really finicky to use too. It's just confusing, although I do appreciate that they at least tried to make the weakness more interesting once again. This may sound contradictory too, but I do think the hatred for him is maybe a little overblown. Like, yes, he is annoying and frustrating, but I'd certainly take him over something like Bright Man. And once you figure out the pattern, he's nowhere near as bad. Now for Pirate Man. This is a good stage, but it's not perfect by any means. I appreciate the use of a lot of different elements from Aquaman here, and there are a ton of branching paths, which is pretty cool to see. My main issue is that the camera isn't great and it makes it really hard to see spikes or enemies in a lot of these sections. Specifically this creative but kind of annoying section near the end, where these spiked mines float around in a huge area, and these bubble makers that let you float upwards on the bottom. Again, really creative. But the camera makes it impossible to see where you'll be safe on the bottom because it alternates safe areas with insta-kill spikes while off screen. So that sucks. And the mines are also extremely hard to react to if you decide to take the upper path. This camera issue was kind of a thing in Tengu Man as well, but here you jump way higher due to being underwater, making it much worse. Oh, and the boss is pretty interesting. I love how they use the wave burner as his weakness, which creates a strong current underwater that pops the bubble Pirate Man bounces around in, but only if he's currently moving. He's also very beatable with just the charge shot, which I again really appreciate. Just a fantastic boss and one of my personal favorites, which brings the stage up a few points for sure. Even better, you can also use the weapon to push any of these mines around if they're in your way, which is so cool and maybe my favorite stage weapon interaction I can think of in the whole series, so I like this stage despite its issues. But finally we have Dynamo Man, unlocked by beating Astro Man, and thank God, because once again he is near impossible without his weakness. Honestly, this stage itself is really good, probably the best in the game along with Cold Man. It does a lot of stuff without ever dipping into confusing or annoying, except maybe the slow and boring mini-boss, but that's not a big deal. There are also a lot of callbacks. You have the breakable chains of boxes from Grenade Man, and Metal Man style conveyor belts with interesting enemies on them. There are also these awesome dark rooms where you have to observe this light moving around to learn the layout, but once you do, you can just zoom on through in no time, giving you a chance to test your memory if you want to feel awesome. I didn't have any issues with the stage. The boss though? What the heck was this? Learning how to beat it took forever because it was so confusing. When you do enough damage, he just jumps up to the ceiling and starts healing, and you have to break these two pads on the sides to stop it, but you have to do it really fast or else he's nearly at full health again. Also, look at this travesty here. The hitbox on those healing pads leaves a lot to be desired. His weakness is weird with the copy vision. You have to use it to attract his attacks and prevent yourself from taking damage, although it doesn't actually do extra damage to the boss, so it took me a while to figure out that this actually is the weakness at all. I died like 8 times before I figured out what to do, although it was pretty satisfying figuring out how to beat this one. With all that covered though, we're on to the final stages, and actually there are only 3 of them this time. King Stage 1 is pretty solid. I like the way that it combines obstacles from every single stage in the game, and it makes some of the best use of your weapons of any castle stage in the series, which is awesome. There are definitely a few annoying parts, but they're not too bad. Although, replaying the stage if you die to the boss isn't all that fun because it's decently long. And I already knew about this beforehand, so I was prepared. But the boss just drops you into a one-hit kill if you don't jump off the platform before hitting it the last time, which is one of the lamest things I've ever seen. Sure, maybe the fact that I had prior knowledge of that trap means I don't have an unbiased view or whatever, but hey, I've been playing these games and watching videos on them for years before I started making my own. Outside of that cheap shot, the boss is actually decent fun though, with a lot of random stuff going on that still somehow works. And the dynamic of lowering the platform to expose the weak point while not falling into the lava is a great idea. And there's a monkey for whatever reason, which is probably a positive for someone, I don't know. But oh god, if you've played this game before, you know what that means. It's finally time. King Stage 2. Yeah, I'm just gonna come out and say it, this was the worst stage in the entire classic series by far. I have no idea how this garbage made it into the final product, and while I don't hate most of the game, this alone makes it hard to want to come back and replay it. Basically, this is just 2 stages stitched together into one obscenely long one for no apparent reason. There are 4 bosses with plenty of level design to get through between each fight, and each of the bosses takes so long to finish. Here's the thing, the majority of the level design is just unremarkable filler gameplay, so I think I'll skip past most of that. Let's talk about these bosses instead. First up is King Tank, which fails miserably as a Mega Man boss for one simple reason: it's legendarily boring. This giant tank has 3 weak spots, each of which is able to perform one type of attack, so you have to destroy each piece to finally take down the tank. There is nothing wrong with that idea at all. In fact, I can actually think of many different bosses in many games that are designed like this and are really fun. The issue is the execution. For some reason, you spend most of the fight underneath the boss, safe from any attacks as long as you don't fall asleep or throw your controller in the blender. Whenever it does this attack where it rains explosive mines on you, just use your screen nuke to do damage. Whenever it does this other attack where it launches some of these tiny enemies from Magic Man, just use the magic car to make it completely impossible for you to take any damage. And then when it uses this rapid fire gun at you, just use the copy vision to direct the shots away from you and do damage in return. None of these are in any way challenging. In fact, this might be the easiest boss in the whole game after the Green Devil. But like, why does it need to take 3 minutes or more per attempt? Most of your time isn't even spent fighting the boss, it's waiting for it to just stop moving around randomly doing literally nothing because you can't do damage until it tries to attack you. Like seriously, just look at this right here. Does that look fun to you, somehow? I highly doubt it. And here's the thing, this boss wouldn't be so bad if it came at the end of the stage and you only had to beat it once. It wouldn't be good, but having to replay this long and drawn out fight that takes about as much skill as watching a cutscene is a horrible punishment for getting a game over later on in the stage. Which, trust me, you will. Guaranteed. Thankfully, at least that won't happen on the second boss, King Jet, because you get an infinitely respawning extra life before it, so as long as you're at least a tiny bit careful, it's literally impossible to get a game over here. King Jet is probably the boss that the most people complain about, and yeah, I can see why. In terms of its actual design, this is easily the worst in the game. For whatever reason though, I actually didn't mind it all that much myself. Basically, you just have a series of platforms at various heights that you constantly have to jump between while attacking the weak point at the top of the boss. This means you have to be on point with your platforming at all times, and the boss has a lot of health, so it's easy to get tired over time and play worse. You also can't see the health bar, making it a bit of a guessing game. The overall concept I really like, but the execution is very, very weird. The weak point is hard to hit, which is annoying when you're already focusing on not falling into the abyss. This alone would honestly be fine, but the worst part is this attack where it launches a fist that can actually destroy the platforms you're standing on. In some configurations, as Mega Man especially, that can literally put you in a checkmate situation where there's nothing you can do at all. And this is completely random, meaning sometimes you'll be totally fine, but sometimes the boss will just decide out of nowhere to force you to restart from the beginning, and that just sucks. I find it a fun enough challenge when that doesn't happen, but like with King Tank, it makes it so much worse when this is yet another part of the punishment for dying later on in the stage. This really should have been the end of King Stage 2, and the rest should have been turned into King Stage 3, but for whatever reason they decided to mash them together. Probably the single worst decision ever made in any Mega Man Classic series game, because it makes the endgame freakishly painful to get through. Oh, and here's the really fun part. After that fight, they had the audacity to force you to time this jump onto an ice block the instant it spawns, and guess what happens if you miss it? How in the world did that make it into the final product? This would already be terrible in any other stage, and yet they had to put it in the longest and hardest one. And even worse, dying on the third boss puts you right back before this jump, likely causing you to waste yet another life. And hey, this isn't King Jet anymore. We don't have the luxury of a respawning extra life. Die enough times and you're going all the way back to the beginning before even King Tank. Making matters even worse, the third boss was actually my least favorite. Yes, seriously. Worse than King Tank and worse than King Jet. And that's King himself. The first phase is yet another confusing boss pattern and the absolute worst place for that to be. King can't actually be damaged, he has this shield that absorbs the energy and shoots a laser back at you. So you literally have to figure out that the goal is to sit there dodging his attacks until the game arbitrarily decides to move you to the next phase. Oh, and by the way, this attack where he launches a bunch of X's at you takes a near pixel perfect jump to dodge as Mega Man, meaning you're likely to eat a bunch of damage just waiting for the boss to actually start. Also, this is one of the stupidest looking bosses I've ever seen, as King just jumps over your head repeatedly while nothing else happens. Seriously, who looked at this footage right here and thought, yep, that boss is perfect, no need to change anything there? Anyway, once you finally get past this first phase, Proto Man shows up and you get to match through another 20 seconds of dialogue as he sacrifices himself to destroy the shield. I swear in my 4 playthroughs of this game I had to watch Proto Man die like 20 times, and the second phase is... oh god, what the heck is this? His weakness is the lightning bolt, but actually using it almost guarantees you'll take damage, because there's a bunch of lag time between the animation starting and the attack actually coming out. So in that time he just moves on top of you and there's nothing you can do. With Base, you can literally just double jump extra high in the air, but with Mega Man it's a lost cause. You have to get lucky. What an awful boss, and this guy right here is the reason I got like 2 or 3 game overs and spent an hour and a half on this one single stage my first time through. An hour and a half! That's like the entire length of many other Mega Man games spent on just one level. Why? By the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, but a massive part of the reason these bosses are so tough and absolutely force you to get good at the game is because like Mega Man 8, there are no E-Tanks. Yeah. In a game that already would have been one of the harder ones in the series with them, you have no way to heal during a fight. There is nothing you can rely on to get you through. Eddie doesn't exist, you're hallucinating. I didn't have an issue with this in 8 because that game was pretty easy anyway, and didn't need them. But here, man does it make everything way harder. And once again, that by itself is okay. Hard games are great. But combined with a stage this long with so many bosses, it just leads to frustration. Mega Man as a series is based largely on trial and error, and that's a big part of what draws people to these games in the first place. Normally the short stages are the game's way of not punishing you too much for trying the wrong thing, so you can get right back to trying something new. Here though, you can't. Making one mistake might mean repeating 20 entire minutes of slow, boring, and repetitive gameplay, which makes you want to try and find the most optimal strategy as soon as possible, instead of experimenting with your various tools. It's antithetical to the very core of Mega Man's design. By the time I finally beat King and got to the final boss of this stage, Jet King Robo, I was just exhausted. If I had to do everything all over again, I might honestly have given up because I was having no fun here at all. Thankfully, this one is actually very solid and one of the best bosses in the game. He takes the attacks from every other boss in the stage and throws them all at you in this new scenario where you have to climb up and shoot the head of this giant robot. All the attacks are fun to dodge and fair, except for this one stupid one that only shows up with Base where this tiny little dot zooms around the screen. Like, what am I supposed to do here? But yeah, I was just barely able to beat this boss before dying, and that felt really good to pull off. And that finally, mercifully ends King Stage 2. I have no idea what the heck they were thinking here. I mean seriously, even if you love this game, can you really blame anyone for hating it based on this stage alone? It's seriously so terrible, in particular to a first-time player. If I wasn't playing the game for this video, I doubt I would have even considered playing it ever again solely because of this one horrible stage. But before we get to those other playthroughs, we still have one more level to get through. And that is the single Wily stage. But oh god, do not think you're done yet, because this one is the boss rush. It's actually done in more of a Mega Man 1 style though, which, hey, I really like that, in concept at least. Instead of just playing all the bosses back to back in one room, you get some real level design in between each one. Now, the issue is that, like with King Stage 2, good god is this level long, and contrary to what you'd expect, between these bosses is some of the hardest platforming in the game. Just look at these disappearing block sections, like come on, you had to put these in a room covered on all sides by spikes? The saving grace here is that these bosses are probably the best in the series so far, specifically if you have all the weaknesses. Like I said, most of the weapons have actually interesting effects, and it makes the whole dynamic of playing them really fun to figure out. I was kind of blown away by how easily I ended up demolishing all of them here as soon as I put in a bit of effort, and that's really cool. Although, Cold Man... yeah, I don't know, I do appreciate the game trying to make the final stage more interesting, but in the end I found it to be far too long, leading to boring repetition of the first few sections when I inevitably got a game over later on. I really was not having all that much fun here. Although I will say the final boss is pretty good. The Wily machine is not all that hard, nor is the capsule, and their attacks are all pretty fun to dodge, except for a few in the capsule that are kind of just a guessing game. But if you do get to the capsule at full health, you're almost guaranteed to win because of the charge shot being very easy to hit. So that's a pretty decent way to end a very frustrating game, is what I was going to say. Remember, that was just one of my 4 playthroughs. We are definitely not done here. Maybe you noticed how I spoke in past tense while describing a lot of the level design. Well, that's because a lot of those thoughts are outdated. Playing this game 3 more times really put a lot of my opinions into perspective, And not just on this game specifically, but it kind of reframed the way I view the entire series. I think this is going to be an interesting discussion, so let's talk about that. For our first order of business, how does the game change when playing it as Bass? The answer is significantly for the better. Yeah, I may not have enjoyed a good portion of my playthrough as Mega Man, but I really did have fun with it as Bass, and that's for a lot of different reasons. First of all, his higher mobility changes a lot about how you tackle this game's challenges. In a lot of cases, you just kind of don't have to. Like, look at the Wily stage. Why go through these tough disappearing block sections when you can just reach the ladder with your normal movement? Why struggle with these balloons in Tengu Man when you can just not? Why fight for your life trying to dodge Burner Man's charge attack or King's ridiculously stupid pattern when you can just double jump high in the air? Why scramble to get rid of Dynamo Man's healing pads when you can just shoot them from below? Seriously, he makes the game so much easier. Mega Man does have the charge shot, but as I said before, that really only matters if you don't have the weaknesses. With them, Bass's higher mobility makes him simply better in basically every scenario, and then his shortcomings can be easily fixed. He can't shoot through walls, but there's an upgrade for that. He only does 1 damage at a time, but there's even an upgrade for that. The shop items along with Bass almost trivialize the second half of the game. There are a few instances where the two characters just get entirely different paths for a short time, and I honestly think they should have leaned into that a lot more. Like, I don't know, these tiny little sections where Mega Man can slide under a passage to avoid a few enemies, let's get something a bit more distinct than that. I do like how the optional CDs use the different characters though, like how Bass can reach these upper areas in Pirate Man or shoot down to go through the floor here in Ground Man. Look, I won't say the game isn't designed properly with both Mega Man and Bass in mind, but one character is clearly better and more fun to play with. So playing as Mega Man kinda just feels like handicapping yourself. It's to the point that with Bass I beat King Stage 2 only dying 1 single time, which still took 20 minutes by the way, seriously, get that stage out of here. The only part of the game that feels significantly harder as Bass is actually the final boss, because the only way to deal good damage is the magic card. You'll never run out of ammo, but the hitbox is smaller than the charge shot, so it takes more effort to line up and it does less damage. That's about it though. But also, I feel like both characters are a little unbalanced. You could say that, yes, that is the entire point of the game, and you'd be right, but it does make it so neither playthrough feels totally complete. Like with Bass, yes, the game is easier and more fun, but it also means you're not really engaging with its challenges, you know? But even then, a lot of the time I'd rather do that than actually play through them because a lot of parts are really annoying and I do want to skip them. A Bass playthrough often feels too easy and straightforward, whereas a Mega Man playthrough feels unfair at times even if it is totally doable. The unfortunate thing is, I don't really have any way to tell how much of that feeling is me learning the stages and bosses more from playing the game multiple times, and how much is actually Bass himself. Like, if I had played the game first with Bass, would I have found Mega Man that much harder? I honestly don't know. But what I do know is that Bass made the game far more enjoyable for me despite being too powerful, and brought up the game significantly in my mind. I was originally going to place this as my second least favorite in the series, but now it's a lot harder to tell. A Bass playthrough is more like here in my rankings, which, I mean, that's a pretty big jump. So I'd average it out to a solid game in the series. But oh man, if you thought that was confusing to parse through, which it definitely was for me so I don't blame you, we still aren't done. What about my 2 playthroughs of the GBA version? Well, here's the thing. The problem with Mega Man and Bass on GBA is that it's the exact same game as on Super Nintendo. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the original is terrible and needed to be fixed up, although, I mean, at times it really did need that. What I am saying is that they needed to do a lot more work porting this game to GBA than just putting it on there. Sure, the game still looks good, and sure it sounds okay, although the music is clearly downgraded thanks to the GBA hardware, but it plays comparatively like garbage thanks to a few small changes. The biggest of these is the smaller screen of the GBA, which makes every single issue in the game far worse than it already was. Somehow they messed up the camera control. In a Mega Man game, how do you even do that? Big chunks of level design near the top and bottom are just hidden off screen because they didn't do anything at all to account for this game being on the GBA. Like, look at this, what even is this? Did they have $2 total of a budget to make this? And that's not even considering the moments in the original that already had issues. How in the world are you supposed to navigate Pirate Man or Tengu Man or Magic Man, which have a lot of vertical level design, when there's a bunch of damaging obstacles you literally can't react to? And again, by this point I had already played the game multiple times, so I had an advantage over a new player. I can't even imagine how painful it would be to have this as your first experience with the game. If you need another example of how much of a rush job it was, look at this. This enemy in the Wave Burner tutorial isn't even fully on screen. Like, how do you mess this up? Some of the faster bosses also spend even more time off screen than they already did, making Burner Man and Tengu Man so much harder than intended. I didn't have an issue with them given my familiarity with the game, but yeah. Oh, and annoyingly, Bass has to double tap a direction to dash instead of having a dedicated button, which just makes him clunkier than he was before. The only good thing I can say about the GBA version is that when you get to a checkpoint, it actually tells you now. That is a nice quality of life feature more Mega Man games could use, but that's literally the only thing. Just a bad port, and considering this was the way the vast majority of players outside of Japan experienced the game, no wonder Mega Man and Bass has the reputation it does. Like, yeah, obviously. I would still stray very far away from calling it the only reason, as I think the Super Nintendo version would still be pretty divisive if it had released to the whole world instead. But not like this. Did I actually have a bad time with it? No, honestly I enjoyed myself, but that's once again only because I had already played the original multiple times. So I don't think it totally ruins the game, but it certainly doesn't help matters. I would not recommend playing the game on GBA under any circumstances. Well, that is finally every version and playthrough accounted for. Before we wrap things up, I have one more thing I wanted to talk about that pertains not just to Mega Man and Bass, but every single game in the series. See, having played this game 4 times made me realize something pretty important. Mega Man games just irreversibly change on repeat playthroughs. I've played the other games in the classic series 3 to 4 times each, and if you've watched my videos on them, I talk about how most of these games really aren't very hard, despite the franchise's reputation as being full of pretty tough entries. But that's not 100% true. Playing Mega Man and Bass was a rare chance for me to experience a new Mega Man game for the first time, and it made me remember that I actually found most of the classic series pretty difficult in my first playthroughs. Only once I had played them a few times, learned the boss patterns, remembered the weakness orders, found some cool tricks online, played around more with the special weapons, and made myself understand the games more did I actually start to feel like they were easy. Back in my Mega Man 2 video, I mentioned how I originally didn't like it, but I enjoyed it more and more with each playthrough as I learned how to navigate around the garbage that the game does have. The first time I actually found it to be a pretty hard game, possibly having more trouble with it than I did with Mega Man and Bass my first time, and in playing it more I uncovered all the fun parts and got to experience those instead. By contrast, Mega Man 4 never really got more fun for me to play, but it definitely did get easier over time. This effect doesn't work the same way with every game or with every player, but I did experience it with all of them to some degree. Then Mega Man and Bass follows from what happened with 2. I honestly had more fun playing the GBA version despite its obviously lower quality. By that point I could breeze through the stages and bosses, knew when to use each special weapon, knew how to avoid parts I didn't like, but still was able to play around and try new things. This game really does have a lot of different ways you can play it, and that's one of the great things about it. A Bass playthrough is honestly a lot of fun, and the second time around a Mega Man playthrough was also a pretty decent time. Sure, I still think there are a ton of issues, particularly King Stage 2, which never became more fun no matter how well I learned to get through it. Despite liking most of the game now, I know I won't ever enjoy this part of it. Except for King himself, when I realized his pattern could be avoided by noticing that he just won't stop jumping the whole fight, including in Phase 2. But that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. I know in Mega Man 2 now that the Boo Beam trap is coming, so despite thinking it's horrendously designed, it doesn't cause me any problems nowadays. Similarly, I don't really die to King anymore, the bosses are all fun because I know the weakness order and that's how they're the most enjoyable in this game, and all of the annoying parts of the various stages have some kind of way to get around them quickly. So in the end, I don't think Mega Man and Bass is a top tier Mega Man game or anything like that. I'd probably put it right around the quality of Mega Man 7, which is solidly middle of the pack. Maybe a tiny bit lower, I'm not too sure. Playing any game 4 times in a row does a lot to confuse your opinions of it. But I do actually have a good amount of fun with it now, despite my first playthrough being a pretty painful experience at times. And hey, the Mega Man community loves to replay these games over and over until nothing in them is challenging anymore, and rank their enjoyment based on that experience. Is that a fair way to show off the games to new players? I mean, I don't know, it's up to you to decide that for yourself. But if that is how you want to do things, I think it's at least fair to give Mega Man and Bass a similar treatment. So I'll just rate it based on my current opinion, merging all 4 playthroughs. But that's the unfortunate thing. Why would I have even replayed this game in the first place if I didn't enjoy it the first time around? I only did it for this video, so I can't really blame anyone for hating it based on their one and only playthrough. After dealing with King Stage 2 the first time, I would have done the same and never played it again. It's not even available in the Legacy Collection, so you kinda have to go out of your way to play it. And like, I wouldn't have replayed my least favorites in the series 3 times if not for binging the whole series being an interesting and accessible way to play those games. Not as much for this one, and that's really a shame. And this is the point I keep bringing up. I do think it's bad game design to have something that's unfun and confusing on the first playthrough, but becomes trivial after you know what to do. And unfortunately, Mega Man and Bass does have a good amount of that. It's no Mega Man X6, that's for sure, but it's also nowhere near spotless in this regard. A second, third, or fourth playthrough will make most Mega Man games more fun, but that shouldn't be a requirement, you know? So I do have to detract points from my final score for that. I wouldn't be consistent if I didn't. At the very least, this game does have the excuse that it has 2 main characters, so it is begging you to do more than one playthrough, which does help out a bit. As for the GBA version, while I think it does make the game a lot worse, I wouldn't say it's quite enough to totally ruin it. A lower tier Mega Man game for sure, but maybe not dead last? I still had a pretty decent time with it after all, with my base playthrough being very fun, and my final Mega Man playthrough being better than my first one at least. I can definitively say that despite the way things started, I like Mega Man and Bass now. I think it's worth a play if you're a Mega Man fan, and I would strongly recommend starting with Bass and going to Mega Man second. I mean, usually you're supposed to play games on easy mode before hard mode, so that makes the most sense to me. I'm certainly not saying you're guaranteed to like it, but hey, a good number of people still like it way more than I do. Maybe you will too. Anyway, wow, that took a while. But still not as long as King Stage 2. Yeah, I didn't expect this video to get so big, but here we are. After this and my Dragon Quest video, I'm thinking of doing some more remake comparisons in the future, since I've enjoyed making them so far. And you know what? After I cover Dragon Quest 1 HD 2D in the next video, since I don't want to push that one too far into the future, I think let's keep the momentum going. Join me right after that for Mega Man 9, 10, and 11 in quick succession. 3 games that I also have a good amount to say about, but probably not this much. Hopefully. Dear God, this was a lot of effort. Well, see you then, and thanks for watching.